3, 2, 1.
Voice with Julia, change your voice, change your life.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Voice with Julia's Technique Talks, where we demystify conversations surrounding vocal technique with behind-the-scenes access to great singers of today. I'm your host, Julia Radosh, and with me here today is Mezzo-soprano Chrystal E. Williams.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here, Chrystal. It's so great to talk to you.
Thank you.
So Chrystal, just to give you all a picture of how awesome Chrystal is, she has been described by leading critics as strong and so assured, lively negotiating the coloratura demands before descending into a robust low register, and poised, polished, in complete command of the vocal calisthenics. Oh, wow. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
something we only dream of having as singers written about us. That's so cool. Recent engagements include her Metropolitan Opera debut as Maketaten in Glass's Akhenaten this season, the role of Rebecca in Charlie Parker's Yardbird, which she has sung with Opera Philadelphia and the Apollo Theater, Seattle Opera, Arizona Opera, Atlanta Opera, and a co-production with Hackney Empire and English National Opera. Katarina in Lady Macbeth of Mtsensk, and Dido in Dido and Aeneas with Birmingham Opera Company UK. Stewardess in Flight in a debut with Minnesota Opera. Intimate Apparel by Ricky Ian Gordon in a workshop with the Metropolitan Opera and Lincoln Center Theater. Beethoven Symphony No. 9 under the baton of Sir Simon Rattle with the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. And she was the soloist in Bach's Nach dir Herr verlanget mich with the Philadelphia Orchestra, with Yannick Nézet-Séguin conducting. Next season, she debuts the role of Carmen with Opera North UK. Ooh, yeah. Other companies, yeah, that's like a dream, right? Carmen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Other companies she has sung with include Washington National Opera, Sarasota Opera, Glimmerglass Festival, the Caramore Festival, Knoxville Opera, Northern Lights Festival, Opera Delaware, On-Site Opera, Lancaster Symphony, Springfield Symphony, Norrköping Symphony Orchestra in Sweden, Cairo Symphony Orchestra in Egypt. That's awesome, by the way. Did you like Cairo?
It was awesome. It was definitely one of those big-eyed kind of dream moments. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Other roles include Rosina in The Barber of Seville, Olga in Eugene Onegin, Pearl and Mary O'Fallon in Ricky Ian Gordon's Morning Star, Hansel in Hansel and Gretel, Elizabeth Keckley and Coretta Scott King in Philip Glass's Appomattox, Dulcinea in Massenet's Don Quixote, Linda in Kurt Weill's Lost in the Stars, and Hannah in Michael Tippett's The Icebreak, amongst others. Chrystal has been honored by many competitions, including the Wilhelm Stenhammar International Music Competition as audience favorite, the International Belvedere Singing Competition, the Giulio Gari Competition, the Mario Lanza Competition, the New England Regional Finals of the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions, the Liederkranz Foundation, and the Giargiari Bel Canto Competition. In 2019, Classical Post Awards chose Chrystal as the most innovative singer, mezzo-soprano, this year. And this year, she is nominated in the category of Young Singer by the International Opera Awards. That is so cool. Chrystal is a graduate of the Academy of Vocal Arts in Philadelphia, where she earned her artist diploma in opera performance. She is also a graduate of Yale University School of Music and Carnegie Mellon University. In addition, in 2004, she founded the Chrystal E. Williams Scholarship to help students wishing to pursue a career in the performing arts. This scholarship is funded in part by her concert, An Evening with Chrystal E., held annually during the month of June in Norfolk, Virginia. Wow. Chrystal, I just love reading all your accomplishments because you're so young and you've done so much. Just briefly, I'd love you to tell me about this I've seen your scholarship competition or it's scholarship fund. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So actually, when I went to school, I was graduating 2004, senior in high school myself, and I was applying for all of these conservatories and universities, and the application fees alone were really expensive. And I kept saying to my mom, kind of, this is so unfair. You know, I have great grades. I'm a wonderful student, but most of the scholarships are for, you know, math and science or, you know, medical fields. And I mean, there just wasn't, I couldn't find scholarships for the arts, specifically for what I wanted to pursue. And so I was becoming a bit frustrated, and because my mom always said we were too rich to be poor and too poor to be rich. So, you know, me, I was looking already 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade for those scholarships. Okay. So I was looking for them, and I just, for the life of me, I kept finding everything but what fit me. And so my mom said, you know, Crystal, why don't you just create your own? So the first year was 2004, and I gave a recital, and the money that was raised from the recital, I took and I used it to help me go to college. And then I went back the next year and I helped another graduating senior. So that's really kind of how it started, just from a need of support in the arts. And so I wanted my mom, it was just encouragement from my mother, Nanny Adele Morrison Williams. I mean, she's since passed away, but you know, she was a pioneer all on her own. And she just said, you know, if you can't find it, then make it, create it. That's and awesome. So that's where it came from.
Wow. And it's been going ever since then. That is so awesome.
Yes.
Well, so now let's get right into it, because I'm sure everyone's wondering now, how do you do what you do? And I want to know how you do what you do, because I personally experienced your singing in real life time, and it is fantastic. Your process is like stellar, and your singing is really exciting. So I'd love to talk about actually your process for preparing yourself for singing. Mm-hmm. Can you talk me through what that might look like on a day that you're preparing for a performance?
Well, so if I'm going to be completely honest, it usually starts the night before, mm-hmm. because I like to get a good night's sleep. So usually a day before or 2 days, I like to do a heavy workout and then give myself kind of a little, then the day before I like to do like a lighter workout and stretches. And I really do a lot of stretching at that evening before, because it relaxes my body, and then it also puts my mind at ease. And then if I'm being completely honest, I also kind of clean the whole house. Like I end up cleaning everything, organizing, doing all these things. I think it's just a place to put that excited and extra energy. And then it just puts me in a place of calm. And also for me, I believe that, you know, your atmosphere is a reflection of your mental state. So I like to just have everything kind of in order. And then it helps me sleep at night. And so I start with as best I can, the best night's sleep I can get. And then in the morning, I like to sleep in. I'm not a morning person at all. Not there. So I like to sleep in and just kind of start my day in a lazy way. I'll do a lighter workout, maybe a little cardio, and then some strength work, maybe 20 minutes or so, and then a lot of stretching again. And then I just slowly warm up throughout the day. I'll do a couple exercises here and there. Of course, we all were crazy singers, crazy being wonderful. We check our voice like 20 times. Yes. So that's thrown in there as well. And then I just try to clear my mind. I pray, I meditate. Sometimes I go for a walk, but usually I stay inside the house and do a lot of kind of praise and worship, and I'm usually quiet. There's a lot of vocal rest.
Mm-hmm. And when you do your warm-ups, what kinds of warm-ups do you do?
So when I actually start warming up, I do mind, body, spirit. So I pray, meditate to cleanse my mind and prepare myself for what I'm about to do, and just remind myself why. So for me, singing is a ministry. And so I just prepare myself for that. And then I warm up the body. So even though I've done those stretches, I just like to do kind of ragdoll stretches, kind of put my chin on my chest, and then I roll down, like a couple roll downs, and then coming back up. I do some breathing exercises, and then after I've worked out the mind and the body, then I start my actual vocal warm up. And that usually starts with probably some lip trills while I'm doing the body stretches, any kind of stretches. I'm lip trilling or doing some hisses or, you know, things like that. And then when I usually start with, I like to work top down. So it's probably sometimes between D or F major, and I'll just do some scales down, or I'll do maybe a fifth, and I'll start from the 1 to the 5th one on some sirens, just to kind of loosen up the vocal mechanism, and then I kind of get into the the meat of the of the voice.
That's awesome. So now let's stop and take a moment to discuss breath and how you, and breath as it relates to support. How do you view support? How do you view the inhale, the exhale?
Well, breath has always been an issue for me. So I have nailed it down as precisely as I can for myself. So for me, the inhale and the exhale have to come from a place of release. Like the body has to be loose and free. So I always like to tell my students and anyone that's asking me about breath, first of all, you have to get over the fact that you're not a size 0. You will have some kind of, you know, whatever, what do you call it? A little poof or puff or whatever. Pouch, yes. You will have a little pouch. Please have the pouch and love the pouch, embrace the pouch. If the pouch is not released, you will never be able to sing fully and do all the great things in your mind. So for me, it starts from a place of full relaxation. I embrace my pouch, everything, whatever. So from that position, I like to start with hisses, and then I hiss, and so I do maybe 3 hisses, and then I like to, and then I move to, and then I like to hiss or put it with an S. So then I like to do 3 of those, and then I'll basically do that until I have no more air in my body. So it reminds me of the game we used to play in middle school when you're going through a tunnel. How long can you hold your breath? And so for me, it's release, 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 exhale. This is an exhale. And this is starting from, I could start now and then anywhere. You just want to go to the max where you absolutely have to take air. Because for me, I had to learn the hard way that I was just randomly taking in air. And that wasn't quality air, you know? So all of this is backstory so you can understand. So then going back to the process, I exhale all the way until there's no air left in my body, until I possibly might pass out. And then that inhale is where I start my exercise, my breathing exercises, because that is a true inhale. That is air that my body needs, and it inhales to the capacity to which it needs. So I'm not forcing air. I'm not overstocking. I'm not any of these other things that I have learned and unlearned to do. And it just comes from a place of need, because naturally we all know how to breathe. So you have to remind yourself and go back to that little baby who can scream, never gets hoarse, never loses their voice, and they just take in the air that they need, and then they go. So long story short, my inhale starts from a place of need. So I like to exhale until I absolutely must inhale. And then that is the inhale that I take. And I do that probably 3 to 7, 8 times, just to remind my body, what does it feel like to actually inhale from a place of need? Not just my breath, my singer's breath. Because the air is essential to our bodies. We need breath. So without it, there's nothing. There's no speaking, there's no eating, living, nothing. So for me, it's like I go to that live or die point. And then I build from there. And then I do exercises like I redo the hissing, the panting, I redo those. And then I also like to I think of breath as a tire. So it's not just intercostals or, you know, diaphragm or all these other words that we learn. It's actually expanding the rib cage. It's learning that the full mechanism, the lower pelvic floor, everything releases. And I think of breath as releasing this way. So I open, when I inhale, the body, I feel like my lower pelvic floor lowers, it drops, and then my body expands. So this hand is representing the expansion in the back, in my rib cage, in my hard palate. All of this is represented by this hand. And then this hand is the release of my pouch, the release of the pelvic floor, the release of all of these things. So that when I inhale, it's all of this space. And this is what I have to play with. And that's also reflected for me mentally in the space that's created in my mouth. So I always like to think of an O or an U space, because that gives me the most room to play. So I try to keep that image in my mind for both my breath, and then also when I'm actually singing, the actual space or the cavity in my mouth. That's kind of a lot.
No, that's amazing. I'm so glad you went into that much detail. I have a couple of questions about that. So when you release, okay, you're talking about releasing the breath. I'm assuming you mean inhaling at that point, that you're talking about this expansion. Okay.
Yes.
So then when you go to the onset of the tone, does anything change? What happens? What do you feel?
So inhale during this is the tricky part, because just before there has to be an engagement. It's not just release and then you can sing. So, or inhale. So inhale, release for me. That's the same. So when you inhale, there is a moment just before there's actually there's vocal production, and the muscles engage. So for me, the pelvic floor engages. I don't like to say tightens or any of those things. I just like to say it engages, because you're then going to exhale. And when you exhale, you're engaging the muscles. So when we're speaking, things are engaged. When we're singing, you're engaged. So you can't say that nothing is engaged. So there is engagement. And that, for me, is mainly in the pelvic floor. And I try to leave this space open. I try to leave this where it is. So this is the height. This is the openness in the space. And what's engaging is my lower body, the pelvic floor. So I sing from my legs as well. I mean, you'll see me a lot of times, I'm kind of like in an athletic stance a bit. But that's me that's my engagement. But just before vocal production, there is engagement of the lower, for me, the pelvic floor, the lower abdominals, my legs engage, probably my toes, I don't know, all of the lower extremities there are engaged. And then I try to leave everything else alone. And that's including my neck. Oh, yeah. Good Lord.
I know. You and me both. So then once you're singing the line, once you're sustaining the line, what happens in the body? What happens, I guess the pelvic floor, the ribs, Can you describe all of that?
So for me, what's happening is that the engagement has already started. And so for me, as I lose air, or as I exhale rather, the body naturally collapses. I mean, it just, as the air is exhaled, the body, this is what naturally happens. And so that's what happens. I try to give a bit of resistance, so that I think of it like tango, the partners, or any partner dance. You both have to give a bit of, you both have to engage. I will not say tension. You both have to engage in order to create that connection. And so I try to do the same thing while my body is collapsing. I try to do this.
Okay.
And that just keeps me on the breath. So I always wondered, what is singing on the breath? And to me, singing on the breath means actively engaging the pelvic floor continuously while the body is collapsing. So you inhale like this, and as you exhale, essentially, I'm exhaling like this, trying to stay there. So naturally, I'm coming in, but I'm fighting that inclination, and that is what made sense to me. Like, that was my engagement. So what I try to do is literally engage the pelvic floor, engage all of my ribs, everything's expanded. And I try not to, which is so hard, and it took me years to learn this, to not force it or fake it, because that's not, I mean, just because I could show you, I could move my abdominals, I can move my ribs, I can do all these things, and nothing, it means nothing, literally nothing. So you have to find for yourself, what does it feel like to maintain engagement in your body while you're singing a phrase? And for me, one way to test that is to do physical exercise. So I lift one knee. Anything that engages the core will help you to maintain a leg up, will help you leg up, will help you to connect the line and stay on your breath. So I'll do wall squats and all those things. And all it does is engage your core. Mm-hmm. So while I'm singing, it forces me to stay engaged. I could also just lean back. And if you lean back, even while you're sitting there, you'll feel your core engage. Mm-hmm. And that's literally what happens when you're singing. Not so much, I mean, we can go on to all the terms, but for me, the focus is the lower, for me. Yeah. The lower abdominals, the lower pelvic floor. I want to keep that engaged. And so for me, I do things like leg lifts, wall squats, leaning back. So that works for some people, but for me, that it makes me tight, too high up. So that's just an idea so you can feel it. But yeah. But for me, what happens while I'm actually singing, I don't know how exposed we're being, but it feels kind of like you are going to the bathroom. You're just letting everything be free and open. And so when you're engaging, it feels kind of like there's something pushing down, there's something opening while you're pushing down, and then pushing down while you're engaging. But it's, if you want, if I'm trying to be explicit as possible, it seems like there's a force going down, there's an element being released or opened, and at the same time, the outer space, or the tire or balloon, is trying to essentially stay afloat, trying to stay in what is it? What is trying to keep their air in that balloon. So that's for me what happens.
Wow, that's, I think, one of the best descriptions I've heard of that. And because when you talked about how people say sing on the breath, right? Stay on the breath. I think a lot of singers aren't exactly certain what that means for them. And it's so great that you've figured it out in your body, and you're able to express it so clearly. So maybe that helps somebody. I hope so, because that was
a lot. I mean, you hear like sing on the breath, sing on your body. What does that mean?
Right. You're like, I'm doing crunches. What's
nothing's happening. Like, you're still saying it's wrong. Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's one of those, it's because there's so much, but unless we want to be completely brainy and then start using words that a lot of us don't even know or understand, how do you break it down? And that is the mystery behind breath, because so much is happening that we don't understand and don't see. So that's why I like to start from a place of need, so that you really feel like you really understand, what does it feel like to take a breath? Because if you have to take a breath, if you're drowning and you come up from air, you will absolutely take the singer's breath that you need to take. That is the singer's breath.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we just have to get back to what it feels like to breathe like that. And then how do you maintain that? And then that's the second part of the puzzle or the mystery. So that's what I've narrowed down. And it's even still, sometimes it's elusive, and I have to go back and do the work and remind myself, and because when you work, you get to a level, and then for me, I start becoming a little bit nervous. Like, I don't feel that. It doesn't feel the same way it used to feel. Our bodies are constantly changing. So then you have to keep up with your body.
Yes, absolutely. It's a living organism, and it's changing.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to actually take this idea of breath, because you were talking about, to get the full singer's breath, you really need to fully exhale. And then you fully inhale. But, when we're singing repertoire, that isn't always possible to get that full inhale. So how do you navigate that? How do you avoid getting stacked?
Don't breathe.
Okay.
I mean, I literally had to learn that the hard way. I would, I saw comma and studious and you know, attentive artist that I am, oh, I need to breathe, or there's a rest, so I need to stop, you know, and then I would take a breath. And thank God, one of my coaches literally said to me, why are you breathing? You don't need to breathe. Just stop singing, stop the vocal sound, and then come back in. And you have to know your body. So I always thought of myself as someone who had really poor breath. I wasn't good at maintaining long phrases and all this other stuff. That's not true. That's not true. And that's not true for a lot of people, because if you can speak for as long as you can speak, or if you can sing a note on one pitch or one vowel and hold it for however long you can, what you're doing when you actually put in vowels and other vowels and consonants is you're sabotaging yourself. It's not that you can't do it, it's that there are issues in the way that are inhibiting you from maintaining the phrase or holding the phrase as long as you would be able to. So all of that just to say that when I'm singing, or when I'm phonating, or when I'm thinking of breath, I have to just think that, let me start from a place of need. And then I slowly make that faster and faster and faster. And it's a tedious process, I know, but you will get to the point where you can say, and that's sometimes all it takes.
Yeah.
As quick as that. And if you don't have the time to breathe, then I would encourage you to build up the stamina to not have to breathe, if you can. And then at the end of the day, if you're a second behind, whose fault is that? Bach, I love you, but sometimes one of those notes are going to be missing. One of those syllables are going to be missing, or I'm just going to be behind, because for just a second, I'll speed back up, but I have to breathe, you know?
Right.
And once we're okay with that, then we're okay. But it takes time. It just takes time. And it comes from not a place of, it's not this high intercostal breathing. That's not gonna save you, for me.
No.
You have to be able to fully release. And that comes from being able to fully inhale and fully release, period. And then learn how to do that quicker and quicker and quicker. But for me, the key is the release. If you don't know how to release, you will never be able to take a breath. And then you'll never be able to take a breath quickly. If your body has never been in a state of relaxation or rest, engaged rest, shall we say, you'll never be free in order to take that quick breath. And I like to say don't breathe, because it's going to put you back in the place of need. So if you don't breathe and you don't breathe, you're going to need to take a breath. And then when you do take a breath, you will take the breath that you actually need instead of just breathing.
Right.
Your body knows. Like for me, I'm a very, I don't like to say I'm intelligent, because that seems so like, but I'm a thinker, you know, I use my brain a lot. And so I will sit there and dissect this eighth of a rest to death. And to what point? I had to just say to myself, no, stop thinking. You know how to breathe. We all know how to, God made us to breathe, or whoever you believe. I believe God made us know how to breathe. And so we need to go back to those babies. Stop. They're hungry. They need to be changed, or they need to be held or something. It's very simple. Right. And we just need to get back to that simple place. So I don't breathe. And then when I have to breathe, my body will breathe. Yeah. And then I keep going. And it may seem like, oh, that's it. Yes, that's it. It's really simple sometimes. Just don't breathe. And when you actually need to breathe, breathe.
So like that sounds really practical, especially for things like Rossini or really fast tempi stuff. Do you also employ that in longer, like more slower pieces or tempi where there's more space to breathe, but you decide, you know what, I'm not going to breathe there? Do you also do that?
Yes. And that was actually something that I really worked on when I was in Birmingham Opera, or with the Birmingham Opera Company in Birmingham, UK. And the director, Graham Vick, kept asking me, or kept saying to me, do you really need to breathe there? do you need to breathe there? What is that breath saying for the character? Like, how is that breath helping you express this role or whatever you're saying? It was something like that. It was years ago. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, what is it saying? Because breath, we also have to remember that we need breath. We take breaths because we need air, but also we're supposed to take breaths as part of the expression, as part of our character, our role, what we're trying to communicate. And so that was really momentous for me because I had never thought of it like that. I mean, do I need to take that breath? So I literally, I was in performances, and this is why I love Birmingham Opera Company, because they give you the space to try. But I was literally, I mean, talk about nerves. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this phrase. I'm going to go for it. In the show, in the performance, I just went for it. And sometimes you make it, sometimes you almost make it, sometimes you don't, but that's the only way you grow.
Yeah.
So for me, I just kept, and these were slow, like, when I am laid, I'm laid in earth. I mean, I was thinking of Jess Norman and that just, those kinds of lungs,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I just thought, why not? I'm gonna go for it. And so in that slow, largo, dirge, I tried it and it worked. More often than not, it worked.
That's
so
awesome.
Yes, it's really frightening though. It's really easy to do it in the faster pieces and things like that. But when you have, a whole rest, and you're in, 58, your tempo is a quarter note equals 58. That's kind of like, am I gonna make it at all? But,
right.
Yeah, I tried it and it did work. And actually, these are muscles. You can train them. Like when you work out and you see a muscle forming, it's the same. You can train your body to, and I honestly don't know if we're training our bodies or if we're just training our minds not to be afraid. And so then the lack of fear or the removal of fear lets us step into our full capacity as singers, as in our breath and as in our communication. That's something else that, I'll probably think about and digest in my head later. But whichever it is, that was something that I learned from practical application, because one of my voice teachers would always say, you're an opera singer, sing.
Yeah.
Sing. He just kept saying sing. And I just kept thinking, what are you saying? And it finally made sense, just sing. Stop thinking, stop overanalyzing, stop doing all these things. He would say, open your throat and sing. Yeah. And at some point you get to a level where all the hyper and all the hypo and all this other stuff, just sing.
Yeah.
You've put in the time, you've put in the hours, and you've studied the technique. You have to trust yourself. You have to put it into practical application. So at some point, it's not going to be enough to go in your practice room. You're going to have to practically apply it on the stage in front of an audience and learn. And that's part of the curve for us. And nowadays it's scary because everything is filmed, everything is put online. Yeah. So those years where people could go and they could flop, not intentionally, but because they were learning and because they were growing, nobody ever, of course, whoever went, but then it was gone. And now we're all afraid to try. We're all afraid to take risks because, well, I don't live in a spirit of fear, but this is where we are now, because everything's recorded and we feel anxious because it never goes away. And then the so-and-so from this company is going to watch it and then think that that's how I sing. And yeah. And so how do we grow? We try to practice in our practice rooms and in our homes or wherever, but we never get that stage of, where are the companies that will just put you on the stage and let you fall? Yeah. Because we need those too. Those are essential. Oh, yeah. Where are the places that will let you do a recital and try out that new repertoire, without everybody and their grandmother's greatest reviewer being there to ruin your career or, say something awful, Yeah. These are the times that we live in. So it's a unique situation, but I would encourage people to try And Lord knows I'm not saying to go out there and fail and only try on stage. You know, you can get audiences. Nowadays we have Zoom, you can do a recital at home and just make yourself have that pressure, because it's not that we don't have the breath. A lot of times for me, I can sing it one way in here, and then I get on the stage and then I don't know, something happens. And that's the mark of a true professional, is not to do it right once, but to do it, or what is it? You practice not until you get it right, but until you can't do it wrong. So that's kind of my mentality, that it's not enough just to do it in here. You have to do it under pressure. You have to do it when you're tired. You have to do it when you're sick. You have to do it when you know, didn't get any sleep, when life is happening and all your emotions are everywhere. And you have to be able to do whatever you do at that level. And when you get to that point, then you have to reevaluate and do it all again. So it's just this lifelong learning curve. And I finally, like I said, my whole point is just to say, I finally had the space mentally, artistically, and physically to just try and just let go and just say, because no one wants to get in front of an audience and fail. No one does. No artist does that. No, that's just not, that's not how we are. We want to just present something that's beautiful and perfect, and, you know, and I just had to say, I'm imperfect. This is my voice. This is where I am in my career, and I'm going to go for it. And I went for it. And that helped me immensely. Just that mentality. Like I said, I think it freed something up in my mind that then freed something in my body, and then that freed something in my artistry. And that's how it is.
You know, and this is something that people don't talk about, is this mental/spiritual component of technique. And I think that is so essential to singing at a top level. And like you said, you had that boundary, that mental boundary, you pushed past it. Then there's going to be a new boundary. You're going to continually push yourself mentally across that barrier. Right. That's,
and it's I mean, in school we should be able to do that, but when you're also at a higher level, you don't just stop growing, you don't stop learning. So then you just have to take that space, and you have to say that this is okay for me, and I am okay with whatever happens. You have to trust that you're at a certain level, that it won't be an epic failure. It probably won't be your best or what you envision, but it will be that effort that takes you further and higher in your artistry and in your communication. So for me, it's as essential as learning technique. Is learning how to take risk, learning how to trust yourself, and learning how to let go of perfect. Because once you let go of perfect, that just opens up a whole world of everything. I mean, once we just say it will never be perfect. There will never be a perfect performance. I can tell you, because I've been keeping track. There will never be a perfect performance. And yet, and still, there's so many artists that I have been moved to tears. I have been inspired, and I didn't care. They were some of the best performances, better sometimes than the more closer to perfect performances, you know. And I want to be that artist. I want to be the one who inspires and who takes those risks and who makes you like sit on the edge of your seat because they didn't take a breath and they're going for the high note, and you're just like, they're gonna make it. I hope they make it. I don't care if they did it. That was amazing, you know. That's how I want to be. And for me, that was what I experienced in every time I work in England. That's always been my experience. I mean, Lady Macbeth, the Katarina, was probably one of the hardest roles I've ever done. Talk about breath and all of the above, everything we were talking about, how to stay connected, how to breathe, how to sing when you're all kinds of things. I think I had bronchitis twice. I mean, it was ridiculous. But I grew so much from that experience. And it just comes from letting go of everything. Because I literally said, I mean, at least for me, Lord, I can't do this without some help. And so I had to let go of my want and my need to be perfect and have the best Lady Macbeth ever, because, you know, everybody was saying all these things and blah, 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 blah. You just have to let that go. And then also when you get to a certain level, it becomes, you know, well, people expect this. So now, you know, now I have to be this good, or this, I have to be at least this, at this level, or no one's ever going to hire me again, and all this stuff. And then your breath gets tight, your body gets tight, your mind shuts down. And then what happens? You just literally talked yourself out of probably a stellar performance from a place of fear. So for me, the mind, body, or the mind, spirit, or what is it? Mind, body, spirit, they have to be one, because if any one of those are out of whack or out of alignment, that just leaves room for distraction. And usually it's distraction. It's not a lack of knowledge. It's not any of those things. It's just, it could be a simple distraction. I mean, I will never forget, I did a performance of Rosina, and somebody was in the wings doing something. I mean, granted, they shouldn't have been there, and you can blame all this stuff, but it was my job to be focused. And that split second took me out of the recital. I made up some great Italian, but I was counting my journey to my perfect performance, and there it went out the window. Just, you know, so it's just these little things.
Yeah.
For me, mind, body, and spirit, they have to be lined up. And then the risk, I mean, nobody talks about that. But every time we walk on stage, it's a risk. You know, we're so vulnerable. It's literally these two little vocal folds that are influenced and impacted by anything. It could be a sneeze, crying, laughing too hard, anything. Right. Living, and you're just like,
living. Yeah, exactly.
You know? We have to talk about that, because that creates mental craziness.
Yeah. And you know, I've actually heard of some singers developing technical problems solely because of something that was going on in their life. So they brilliant. I mean, I'm sure we could name them. Like we know, like even Callas, like you think about Callas, right? Yep. And so this is, I think, one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of technique, because it all begins here.
Yeah. And if you think about it, who is it? The great tenor. He literally would have all these like frights, and he just couldn't do it.
Wasn't that Corelli? I think.
Corelli. Franco. Yes, Corelli. And he would have beautiful, stunning voice. And we know people like this. Like you said, we can name them. They just have this anxiety, and it's all just. It's not technique. It's not, you know, they probably blame all these things and say like, oh, it's not strong. It's just, it's in our heads. Because our field is so subjective. And, you know, most times we are the worst. We are the number one critic and the worst. So.
That is so true. So true. I want to go back to something you said when we were talking about breath. And then we were talking about, you know, the ability to make the breath last. Now, I'd like to get your perspective on how that's maybe related to both phonation, resonance, registration, all three of those components. How do you manage the breath at this level? And also the registration, how does that play into, you know, because I'm assuming if we've got a leak here, you can be supporting correctly, but if things aren't working well here. So how do you think about that?
So for me, okay, so if you're leaking here, then more than likely you're not fully engaged in your lower pelvic floor, in your lower body, in the lower part of your process. So for me, in my expansion, in my inhalation and release, I am not fully engaged in my lower half if I'm leaking here. And then also, when you want to talk about your resonators, you can talk about placement and all this stuff. But for me, the big kicker is I like to ride my heart pellet out. So I like to have, I don't like to stress so much about it. Like, oh, your soft pellet, or everything has to be lifted. No, because then it can create problems, at least for me. So what I've learned through the years is that in order to maintain this engagement, this breath, I have to engage my core, and the core has to remain engaged. So in ways to check, again, I lift a leg, or I do wall squats or things like that. When we're talking about tension here, I can always tell, because if I can't make the phrase, I already know I'm not on my breath. And it's usually a vowel, poor vowel, one that's placed too far back down my throat. And then I'm just wasting air. It's just too wide and open, and it's just it's like a balloon with a hole in it. It's just bleeding air all over the place. And then if you're talking about the resonators, you can also, so you can have too high of a larynx, you can have a too depressed larynx. All these are factors in here. And then for the resonators, if your space is squashed, if your space is depressed, you will not have the height and the full capacity to ring. So if that space is not fully ringing, there's also this illusion in singing. So in a grand hall in space, when we release, the audience still hears sound. So for me, that still I count as a part of my breath. So we can go to this, and then the audience still hears. So for me, breath is also included in overtones, in the expanded ringing in the space. So if your cavities, if your resonators aren't open, and that can even be from sinusitis, allergies, anything, then that affects your breath, because then you're not, if I can't breathe, well, first of all, if you have sinusitis, which I've had, let's just stop there. You can't breathe, number one, because I like to breathe through my nose. So you can't get a good inhalation. And then the resonate, for some reason, it doesn't ring the same. And then it doesn't go anywhere. So then that's all just like the sound is just being crushed and falling apart in essence. So for me, if the cavities aren't open, of course the sound isn't going to go. Of course the breath, to me, it's all connected to the breath. So we can talk about little cheat sheets as far as sinusitis. I've learned them all. Peppermint oil is amazing. We can go,
Yes.
we talk about that another time. But anyway, that'll open you up really quick. So once you're open, so for me, the cavities being all of these resonators in space and the chest cavity, if they're open, then you have your throat. Are you singing your throat? Is your larynx too high? Is your larynx too low? Literally, is your throat ginormous and pulsing, and like, is it really tight? Okay, yes, it engages, but you can literally feel it. Can you do like this? Can you just turn your head while you're singing? I used to wonder, why is Luciano Pavarotti kind of doing a little, I mean, the man, he was great. He knew. He wanted to check, release that back of the neck, release it, make sure he was loose. So I started doing like this. I started doing a teapot. There's so many places in your body that hold tension. Yeah. I mean, from a tiny finger to your chest. Like, can you bend over and still sing? Can you bend over and hiss? If you can't do that, or if you do that and there's a little, there's tension. Number one, just take a breath. And if you can't evenly hiss, if you can't evenly exhale, or if there's a blip, if you can't rotate your neck and fully sing, or if you notice you get to a place and you lock, there's tension there. So those are all just ways to check. Now, if I'm singing and I've done all of my homework and done all of everything that I envision in my head, which probably I haven't, then the breath is free. I've taken my breath. My neck is free. Another way I do it is I just put my chin on my chest, and I try to sing like this, or I bend all the way over and try to sing folded in half. But for me, they all have to be lined up. So to answer your question, they all are related, integrally related. So if one of those are out of whack, then you are not going to get the best phrase from the breath that you took, even if you took the best breath you could have taken. It's not going to be the best phrase, because something else is out of alignment here or wherever. And then also for me, if you want to talk about resonators, I like to think outside of the space, because I used to think here, and it was just too limiting for me. So now I envision a spot, usually the exit sign, you know, you're on the stage and then there's that exit sign that's like right there.
Yeah.
So I usually try to sing out to that exit sign to get it out of my body and away from, you know, to just send it instead of trying to hold it and adjust it. But all that to say, for me, hard palate, soft palate, yes, don't get hung up on it. Soft palate and hard palate, you can just do a soft snort. So sometimes before I take a breath, just a slight snort.
Oh yeah.
And this just to remind myself what all that up and there should be feeling like. And then some people say that the surprise face or the surprise breath. But just for me, I just do.
Yeah.
And then you have to learn how to not do it high and then do. So sometimes before I would go on stage, I would do a low breath with a snort. Just sets you right up.
Yeah, that's so true. Wow. Do you think about your tongue when you're doing that at all?
That time I didn't, but I should. When I'm thinking on my tongue, I usually try to yawn. So that usually keeps me pretty low. And I'll force a yawn just to make sure my breath is free. And then also this area is free. Because when I yawn, everything's open. Like literally my throat is open. Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's
snorting,
awesome.
yawning. Oh, you can also try a vocal fry. That's for me to make sure that the chords are coming together and that there's no extra pressure, because if there's too much or too little, they won't come together. I mean, if you try to force them, they just won't go. So those are just some little tricks I use to make sure, try to check the space, cavities, and then the breath.
Yeah. And when you were talking about directing your sound, do you feel that you direct your sound up through here to the exit sign or from here to the?
So I like to go around. So it's like this. My hair is
like
kind of
that.
big, but yeah.
And all the
because
way
the
out.
sound comes up, and then out,
Okay, so now if we're going to relate this at dealing with the passaggio with all of these things.
Oh, lovely.
let's start first with, like, you know, the mezzo voice is very special, and that lower passaggio can be very interesting. I think different people have different approaches to it. So how do you approach that lower passaggio?
Well, I call it my lovely cracks. And I approach it as an hourglass. So, and I like to be very narrow and gathered through the passaggio. So I like to warm up or vocalize on closed vowels, so E's, just very gathered vowels. And I mean, ideally I should go back and try it on an open vowel, but I usually don't. I usually vocalize through the passaggio on closed vowels, and then I leave it. I don't go back and try to leave anything to chance. I like to narrow it, gather it, and then I just like to leave that image in my head.
Yeah.
Because,
leave well enough alone. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I usually do it on the 5th, and I'll start and the 5 down to the 1 or sol down to do. And like I said, I'll probably start on, depending on which note, but I'll start not directly in the passaggio. I'll start probably like a third above it, and then I'll end a third below, and then I do that with each individual note of the passaggio, and then that's where I get the 5th. And then I'd probably start on an O and slide into an E. No, actually, I usually start all E, then I go O, E, and then I go O, E, R.
And where does your passaggio begin in the lower? Like, where does it begin and end?
So for me, I would say there's, I would probably say B flat to maybe an E, or an F, depending.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not an issue. Sometimes it can be.
Okay.
Sometimes it's only an issue because of other factors. So.
Okay. And
yeah.
we're talking about the lower passaggio. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. So all the way down to B flat.
Mm-hmm.
That's wow. Okay, that's special. I haven't heard that yet. That's really interesting. So you view that whole area, you've got to keep it. And then once you're below B flat, what can you do differently?
Oh, I open it up.
Okay.
Then those I usually narrow down B flat to E, just to keep it E, just gather it, and then I don't play too much with that. And then I can open, or I mean, you can also do chest mix or whatever. You can do anything in the passaggio. It's just the passaggio, but I am more aware and careful, and I do tend to focus that, especially with things like Carmen. I mean, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know if it's going to be in head, chest, mix. I mean, you have to know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. What about the upper passaggio? Do you have different approaches to that?
Actually, it's interesting because my upper passaggio is kind of shifting, which is expected. But the same there, I gather, but I don't gather on E in the upper passaggio. I mean, I do like to sing in E because I believe that you should be able to sing every vowel in every part of your voice. That's just a good, healthy technique, good, healthy tool to practice. But I usually work the upper passaggio on O, on more O and U instead of E. E can be a bit too like, so that one I usually use a bit more U, actually more U and then O.
Okay. And then when you're above the passaggio, what vowels do you favor?
Oh, well, more, it's like ah.
Okay.
I always think O, but then it becomes more ah.
Yeah.
I don't like to choose ah. Because ah it's just
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's too general of a vowel.
Yeah. O or ah kind of keeps me this way. And it also keeps talking about these space and resonance. It also keeps me in line with my goal of sending the sound out like this. So it just stops and it kind of falls that way, or somehow I just always end up singing back. Doesn't work for me.
So with high notes, you really you go for that O and then it opens. Is that like you aim and then it opens? Okay. And have you always had high notes? Is that a thing that has been easy for you?
Yeah, I've always had them. I mean, and it's interesting because I've always been a bit ambiguous vocally. My voice teacher said I was more of a zwischenfach. I mean, they couldn't place me. I would do competitions and they would say, you should sing this repertoire. And then someone else would say, back and forth. So it's just a different voice.
Yeah.
And it is what it is, I guess. I'm grateful for it. I can do a lot of things, but it can be confusing. And for other artists that are in the similar position, I would encourage them to just sing your voice, sing your full voice in all of its capacity, whatever that is. And eventually someone will appreciate what you have to offer and hire you. But if you start limiting yourself and start trying to cater yourself and trying to fit into a box, undoubtedly you will end up harming yourself, harming your voice or your vocal capacity or potential versus gaining something. I mean, you might gain that gig or that, that contract, but in the long run, it's more detrimental.
And I think you've proved that because if you look at your repertoire, I mean, here you are, you do Rosina, and now you're doing Carmen, and you're honoring both. They're both in you. And that's, I think, really important for singers to recognize. You can do that.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, I mean, what I love is that, and the older that's what they sang literally. I'm not advocating singing everything. If you can, then that's great. Right. But I'm just advocating singing what you actually can sing well. Not just what you can sing, but what you actually can sing well. And I mean, there's so many people who sang a lot of things, and we all have different opinions on whether or not maybe we thought they should have. But there was just a lot more freedom back then, you know?
Yeah.
And nowadays, again, everything's recorded and you have to fit into this box. You have to be the Ina Ana Eta. You have to be the Rosini, the Donizetti, the you know, this, you have to be this kind, you have to be Carmen, you have to be the well, what if we can, I mean, if you can sing more than that, then just sing what you can sing. I mean, I feel like this is a call to the casting directors too, you know?
Yeah.
Y'all have to have imaginations. If we bring you a package of arias that we sing stellarly, it doesn't matter that they're just all over the map. Yeah. I mean, you have an imagination, you can see us, you see our personalities, and you hear us. So if we just sang, you know, Manon, then that's great. And then if they go off and sing something else, then maybe you should hire them for that something else too. I mean, it doesn't mean that they can't sing all of it. It just makes the casting director's jobs easier. And I would say that they need to do a bit more work, and they need to be open to the fullness that is the voice, because we have some incredible voices out here who can do a lot of things, and they can sing a lot of repertoire, and we're missing out because people are hiring them for it. Yeah,
that's very true. Mm-hmm.
Or if you sing Wagner, all of a sudden it's like, oh no, her voice. Oh. I mean, it's like all these stereotypes and all these associations that come with it. And it's like, no, they sang some Wagner, and then tomorrow they're singing Rossini, and
right,
that's fine. Totally fine. The world's not over.
And knowing your instrument, to know what you can do, and know how you don't fit into the box, I guess. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like the Katarina, the Lady Macbeth, I mean, it's typically done by sopranos.
Yep.
Probably everyone in my inner circle, besides one, my coach said, you know, maybe you shouldn't do it. But I felt I could do it. So I just went for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And it's,
right.
If you can, and you know, and you're in a space that you feel like you can try something out, then for sure do it. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, I'm going to go sing like, I don't know, something like ridiculous, you know.
Brunhilde?
Actually, I was thinking Brunhilde. But, you know, I mean, I'm just saying, let's not limit ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, this is a new day and age. I play the triangle. Like, let's all do whatever we need, what we do. We're artists. Like, let's go back to the Renaissance period where we were just artists. It was not this X, Y, and Z descriptive and then singer, you know? Yeah. We're creators. We're communicators.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I'd love to ask you, this is kind of our signature question. What is your desert island vocalise? If you have one vocalise to choose to prepare you for singing, what is it?
Well, one. Okay. If I had to choose one, well, these are done in tandem, so then they're one. So I would be working out, doing some strength exercises, i.e. squats, or some leg lifts, or it could be any of those. Probably I would do wall. Okay, I'll be specific. I'll wall squat. So it would be a wall squat, and while I'm wall squatting, I would do a descending scale down and then back up. So 8, 7, 8, 6, 8, 5, 8, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, you know. So that would be, and it would be on, it varies. Some days I feel like an E, some days I feel like an ah, some days I feel like an oo. So it's usually whatever vowel I feel is going to be productive that day. Because that does vary. And it would be a wall squat, and it would be the descending scale down and back up. And not just straight. It would be 8, 7, 8, 6, 8, 5. And then 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7, 1, 8. That would be my exercise.
So you really go, like, so that's a lot of flexibility in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because
so do you do that fast?
No, I do it slower, and then I do it for many reasons. So I'm doing the wall squat to and make sure I'm engaging my core, to also just warm up my body, because it just gets all the blood flowing. But I do this exercise this way because it works my breath, it works intonation, it works gathering. It also sends me through the passagios and back up. So it either takes me down into it or up out of it. And then it also, in the end, works octaves, which just helps me make sure that my mechanism is aligned. So it's like nowadays everybody encourages you to do exercises that are like multifaceted, or what is it, like 2 and 3 dimensional. So you're not just doing core, you're working core while you're doing, I don't know, some your upper body and then lower body. So the more things that are being involved, the better the workout is. So that's that's the vocal exercise. I try to do a vocal exercise that involves a lot more, because then I hit a lot of things. Yeah,
that is a lot of things. That's awesome. I'm gonna try that one. I like it.
And then also we always warm up on, like thirds or just a normal scale, and so it helps us train other aspects in our mind too. And sometimes they encourage you to warm up in minor or major. Yeah. I mean, mine is major, but if you want to throw in the minor, sometimes you can do that too.
If you want to really think it out, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so Crystal, where can we find you on the interwebs? Where's the best place to find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Crystal E. Williams, and also An Evening with Crystal E., which is the concert I give every year for the scholarship. And then also on Instagram, Crystal E. Williams, at Crystal E. Williams, or you can reach me at Forrópera, because Forrópera is also the duo that I created with Philippe Hostins, in which I play the triangle and sing. So
really, wait, can you tell me a little bit more about Forrópera?
Oh, Forrópera. So Forrópera is a duo that we created. Philippe Hostins is a Brazilian accordionist, and we created it I think in 2018. And it combines elements of classical and traditional Brazilian folk music. But we created this duo and the musical style, or the genre, as a way to foster unity, peace, and understanding through music, because we met in New York, and we were concerned because when I would go to his concerts, it would be one type of people. And when he would go to my concerts, it would be one type of people. And we just felt that it was very divided, and it was very clear, and that we just thought to ourselves, that's not what music is about. We both love music because music is for all, and because it heals and it connects people. And so we wanted to create something that was literally for all. Forró means for all. So a friend of ours, David Vieira, came up with the name Forrópera, which literally combined us two. And so we represent a great dynamic, in our opinion, because, I am a Black singer. He is perceived as white. He's actually Brazilian, but, in the dichotomy, there's Black and white, there's classical and non-classical, there's traditional, non-traditional. And then it's just an effort to remind people that music is not about any of these colors. It's not about station. It's not about, stereotypes. We created this duo to break down those barriers that, we literally both are living examples of non-conforming. I am a Black opera singer. That already is kind of like interesting. I mean, he's from the south of Brazil, yet he plays forró, which is from the northeast of Brazil. And forró is typically a Black or African or of color kind of groove, like where he's from, it's more your Eastern European and, that kind of music. So we both are living examples of just not fitting into a box. And we wanted to capitalize on that and share that with other people and encourage others to not live in a box. So we wanted to create a style of music that's literally an expression of art, where you go to the performance or the whatever we call it, and theater, and you leave just not even knowing what it's called. You just leave having experienced a great piece of music or a great piece of theater. And we want it to be literally for everyone. So whether you have on a bow tie and a tux, or whether you just come in off the street, you know, we just wanted to create a space and a musical style to create a dialogue to address these issues and concerns, and to also bring us all together while we're discussing this, while we're addressing these stereotypes and these issues. And hopefully we can all have a great time doing it.
That is awesome. Everybody needs to check that out. So that's forrópera.com. Is that how?
Yeah, so you can just go at Forrópera. And so actually the premiere is going to be in May of 2021. So
that's awesome. That is very cool. And An Evening with Chrystal E, is that, that's your recital that you give. Can people donate to that?
Oh, yes. So thanks, I completely didn't think about that. So you can totally donate. You can also email aneveningwithchrystale@gmail.com if you want to find out more information about the recitals, the recipients, the requirements to donate. There's PayPal, there's all kinds of ways. So please email aneveningwithchrystale@gmail.com regarding the Chrystal E. Williams Scholarship. And also you can email forrópera@gmail.com.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Any news on Forrópera?
Yeah, that's great. And then also we can Google you and get all of your wonderful performances. Okay, so just one more question about the Chrystal E. Williams. Will that be, because isn't that going to be happening, will that be happening virtually this year?
Well, so actually this year was going to happen in May 1st because of my schedule, and then everything got canceled. So it's been postponed, and I'm trying to see what's happening. I was hoping that we would be able to do it somewhere, but it's looking more likely that it will be virtual. So stay tuned. It will happen in June. I was kind of, it's sad, but excited because then it could still be in June this year. So it will happen in the month of June, but we don't know exactly how yet. I was hoping for an actual space, but everything's shut down. So it will more than likely be virtual. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Well, Chrystal, thank you so much. I think your talks about breath, your talks about mindset were just so eye-opening, and I learned a lot today. So thank you for coming on the show.
Of course, my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Love and share.
Yes. All right, everyone, check Chrystal out. She's awesome. We'll send the links below.